bring in former advisor to Bob Hawke and former Trade Minister in the Labor government more recently, Craig Emerson. Dr Emerson, it's great to see you. It is going to be a sad day, but also a day of wonderful memories for you and for the nation, which treasured Mr Hawke as a leader, didn't it?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that it'll be sad. I mean, there'll probably be a few tears during the course of some of the musical performances, but Bob wanted this to be a celebration rather than a time of sadness. He did pass away a couple of weeks ago, and he said to me that he'd had so much love in his life. He loved the Australian people, and I think they loved him back. And so I think the tone of today's memorial service will be one of celebration rather than commiseration.
I think you're absolutely spot on there. And how is Blanche?
Blanche is fine. You know, she's missing her soulmate, but Bob was becoming increasingly frail. He didn't think that he would make it to his 89th birthday in December and then through Christmas and into the new year. And in fact, he was able to go to the wedding of his stepson Louis with Bree in the Blue Mountains on the weekend before he passed away. So again, he lived a little longer, but he lived a long and happy life. He achieved a lot and did have a lot of love in his life, and that's what he'd like to be shared today.
One of the things that he did do in terms of economic reform, we know about it domestically, but also engagement with the world. His government was very much, that was a priority for him, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, they had the view that Australia shouldn't be shrinking in on itself, but should face out to the world, be confident about facing out to the world. And so they reshaped the economy, Bob Hawke, Paul Keating and their cabinets, to look confidently to the world, to engage with our own region, because even at that time we were still focused more on the European Union and Great Britain than on our own region. And so they foresaw the Asian century. So it's not only an economic integration, but also a cultural one. If you look around Sydney, Melbourne, other capitals in Australia, there are people from all over the world who have made Australia their home, and that would be a great source of pride for Bob.
I love that 2.5 hours out there, certainly getting the music going. This perhaps
yeah, they are, aren't they?
What we'll see.
That's unscripted. I don't know what these people are doing. There they go.
I thought you were going to give us another rendition of Whaler Wipeout, but we'll leave that.
Whaler's going well. Whaler's going well.
Now, Dr Emerson, we remember Bob Hawke as a larrikin Prime Minister in many ways, but he had such a huge intellect. He was able to you know, work with his colleagues in such a collegiate way. He was able to speak to the Australian people on a level that no other leader has been able to do so. Is that how he will be remembered today?
I think so. He was very methodical in the way he went about his work. So he'd deal with one issue and then another, rather than just having a clutter of issues in his mind. So he was very ordered in that regard. And importantly, and I think this is for young people, a bit of a message for young people, he would work, and then when he'd finished the work, he would enjoy himself rather than still thinking about all of the big challenges facing the country. I remember so many times in the comp car with him when we were travelling around electorates, he'd say, "Oh, mate, I'm just going to get 15 minutes. Kip, have a little sleep, turn on, turn off." And I think that's really important, for people who want to occupy, senior places, whether it's in politics, business or, the arts or whatever, that you're able to do that. And so he was very methodical in the way that he went about things. But importantly, he didn't think he knew everything. He would seek counsel and he would seek the advice of his ministers and give them free rein. If they were doing a good job, he didn't need to be involved, but he never believed that he had all the answers. He was always seeking input from others and then would evaluate that.
Yeah, and I know that Richo has told me that he and Bob Hawke would go out for 9 holes at Royal Canberra before sitting days. He loved his golf, got lessons at the lodge, I'm told, and loved his cricket as well.
In the middle of winter, crunching on the grass at the, in the Canberra golf courses. So again, that was important for his kind of mental durability to be able to turn on, turn off all of the sports that you mentioned. He was an avid follower of horse racing. I was his kind of horse racing advisor. And again, that was just sort of a little bit of a mental relief from just the constancy of what is a very big job, effectively, being Prime Minister of Australia. Well, that was his secret: turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off when he needed to be.
Certainly. We just spoke about, there's only really one Bob Hawke. We know that Bill Shorten wanted to, if he was successful at the election, wanted to really continue in the Bob Hawke style. I don't know what Anthony Albanese wants to do in terms of that, but do you think a Prime Minister, a Labor leader, can replicate that, or is it a product of his era?
Well, I think so. No, I think so, and Anthony has actually been saying exactly that he wants to bring Australians together. He's very experienced in that personally, and, I think that is the way of the future. Good on Albo for taking that approach. Bob's view was even if those with whom he had great political rivalry, he thought that they were entitled to their view. He might have thought that they were wrong, but it didn't mean that he disliked them at all. What he really disliked was racism and bigotry. He would not tolerate people believing that they were superior to other people because of the colour of their skin or their religion. So that was very clear way back in 1988 when there were suggestions that we should cut back on Asian immigration. Bob went into the Parliament, put in place in the front of the Parliament a motion that says our immigration program should not be based on race, and that was overwhelmingly supported, including by members of the Liberal Party who actually crossed the floor. So intense was his view about that. His father, Clem, used to say to him, "Son, if you believe in the fatherhood of God, you must believe in the brotherhood of man." And he would add more recently in the sisterhood of women.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that makes us recall, I think, was in 1989 and his reaction to the Tiananmen Square massacre, which he granted permanent residency for all the Chinese students here.
He did, and the day after Bob died, and that morning we were with him at the time, and then the next morning we stayed overnight. There was a knock at the door, and there was this ethnic Chinese bloke, lovely fellow, big bunch of flowers and a message, and he was one of the students who was able to stay, one of the 40,000 students, and he said, "You've allowed me to have my life here, to have children, and you've filled our hearts with joy." So that is one of those legacies, and there were many of them, whether it's Antarctica, whether it's modernising the economy, whether it's the kids being able to stay on at school and go on to university, and his love of human beings. He didn't see them as being different according to their race or their religion.
We're going to hear from Paul Keating today. The two men have had their differences over the years, but they certainly mended that friendship in the end, didn't they?
Well, they have, but there's always been much more that has united Bob and Paul, and they were a fantastic team. I worked with both of them, and really creative, really determined, and it wasn't just the ideas, it was the implementation of the ideas. State the problem firstly, tell the people what the problem is that you're trying to fix, and then go about fixing it and then bedding it down too. Sometimes, it's easier to say, "Oh, we've done that, now let's move on." And there's a lot of people who still are very uncertain about it, might be adversely affected. So attention to detail was really important. But what a fantastic dynamic duo Bob Hawke and Paul Keating were.
They're full of mutual respect and admiration. Dr. Emerson, great to talk to you this morning. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.